SoloScout here. So my 2021 CRF300L has passed 1,000 miles. How do I feel about the bike now as opposed to when I first got the bike? I wrote a song about it. Like to hear it? Here it goes. SoloScout bought himself a motorcycle. It's pretty darn good. Thank you very much. Now what I'm going to try to do is go front to back on the bike and then back to front again. And I'm sure I'll miss a lot of things, but hopefully I'll be able to point out the things that I've noticed over these 1,000 miles. First off, the headlight. So with the winter time change, it's getting dark earlier. And this has the US stock headlight on it. It's not the LED version that outside the US might get on the 300L. And for me, it's fine. It's plenty bright. I don't have any problem with it at all. Now, an LED headlight obviously will draw less current from the bike, and the bike won't have to make as much energy to power it. But other than that, there's really no draw for me to get any type of conversion set up or change out the headlight. The stock headlight works great for me. So next up, the gauge cluster. It's pretty easy to understand once you get past the two buttons. You know, we'll have to hold one down to reset things and the other one to scroll through the different screens. Basically, I just leave it on the screen that shows the odometer, the total miles on the bike, plus the trip 1 fuel economy shows how many miles per gallon I'm getting. And I just leave it there. Hand controls, where the buttons are, turn signals, things like that. Coming from another Honda, my last bike was a Honda 919, so the controls are pretty much the same place. Everything's laid out familiar to me, so there wasn't any stretch trying to figure out what goes where and how to manipulate any of the buttons. So the hand controls have been just fine. The clutch, specifically the clutch pull. I've ridden cable pull bikes as well as hydraulically operated clutch bikes, and this one's awesome. This is a cable pull, obviously, but it is so light. The clutch pull is so light compared to other bikes in its class. It's really pleasant riding. With this bike, you do manipulate the clutch quite a bit. The first 5 gears are nice and close together, and you're going to cycle through them depending on your riding conditions. So it's nice to have that easy clutch pull. The handlebars. So obviously I've just got the stock bars that came with it. The only thing I find lacking in the standard bars are the height. I'm not an aggressive off-road rider. I may never be there. So the only thing that I'm noticing is that I'm standing up more like you're supposed to, and they're just a little bit too low for me to reach and really get good throttle interaction. So a set of risers might be in my future, but I really don't think that I'm going to do a full bar upgrade. It would be nice to have a higher quality, lighter, stronger set of bars on there, but I'm not sure if I really need to go that route just yet. The stock bars have a good geometry for me, where my hands naturally lay on the grips. Seems comfortable riding. I'm not finding any awkwardness maneuvering the bike, so the geometry set up nice. Maybe just a set of risers. The next thing that I'm always looking at, thinking about, woulda, shoulda, coulda, the gas tank. So I've got the 300L, not the Rally, so I've got the 2-gallon tank instead of the 3-gallon tank. My tank also has the removable filler lid rather than the neat looking flip up lid that stays attached to the tank. So, you know, that's what I'd rather have. I'd rather have the flip up lid on my tank. And that's just a personal preference that has nothing to do with how well the bike rides. I haven't had any problem out of my removable filler lid, manipulating it with the key, setting it to the side, filling the tank up, and then snapping it back on. I would just prefer the neat flip-up lid like my old 919 had. That'd be cool. The extra gallon of gas might come in handy as well, but so far I've been able to plan around the 2-gallon tank. The seat. Obviously, I've got the stock seat on there. I put a Corbin on my 919 and never looked back. The upgrade was night and day as far as comfort. It was harder to slide left and right when going around curves, but the quality and the comfort of the Corbin was just night and day. So there might be a Corbin in my future for the 300L. What I did do was remove the grab strap. Now on that grab strap, it's simply wrapped around and then bolted to the seat pan, the underside of the seat pan. So if you want to remove yours, all you have to do is take the seat off, flip it upside down obviously, take the nuts off, and then use the seat hooks themselves. They're just little L-shaped metal hooks, and use them, pull up on those hooks while you wiggle the strap back and forth, and it'll come right off. And then put the hooks and the nuts back on, obviously, and then put your seat back on. If you do it that way, you won't have to use a screwdriver to try to pry underneath the metal grommet area, the metal flashing area of the strap, and bend it all out of shape. So just a tip there, if you want to do that, remove your grab handle, your grab strap. Removing the grab strap on mine allowed me to sit back an extra inch. And I do move forward and backward on my seat quite a bit. And when I hit that 20-minute pavement commute to go to church or just to go to town, it is really nice to be able to sit where that grab strap went and be comfortable sitting there. So for me, it was a big improvement to remove the grab strap. Hopefully I'll get a rear rack and saddlebag and side rack combo soon. And then I'll have that grab point if I need to pull the bike backwards or forward out of the muck or something. All right, the tail light and license plate area of the bike. So most people I talk to, they really like the idea of the tail tidy, or the way that the tail tidy looks. You know, it takes off that big chunk of plastic hanging down and moves everything up nice and close. Makes it look sporty or racy or just better looking. To me, it's not a big deal. I cut my teeth on Japanese inline 4 street bikes, and they were all standards, so they had the standard riding position, and they had either a big fender coming down the back or the plastic license plate holder coming down the back, and so I'm used to seeing it. I'm just used to seeing that on a motorcycle, and so I think it's normal. So for me, I probably am not going to look into any kind of a tail tidy kit until they get down to maybe $10 or so, and then maybe I might do that. The rear tire, I'm just got the factory IRC tire on there, and I've been happy with it so far. I mentioned in another video that I might like to try out the Shinko 700s. Those look like a pretty decent tire for what I'd use the bike for. These IRCs, though, they've kept me upright on the bike without any trouble, even when pushing my limited skill set. I'm probably averaging about 50-50 gravel and pavement right now. It is a 20-minute ride one way to town on the pavement portion, so I do get a lot of pavement in. But during the week, I'm on gravel roads and fire roads or forest roads, so I get balanced out on gravel and dirt roads that way. During the week, if I go out scouting roads or interesting places to go, or even moto camping, I usually don't touch the pavement at all. My house is on gravel, the roads to get there are gravel, dirt, what have you, so I get a good balance from that pavement riding onto the dirt and the gravel. Rear suspension. Okay, so my initial thoughts were the suspension was doing okay for me, and that I really wasn't pushing it that much. And I wasn't. It was doing just fine. Now I'm getting more comfortable off-road onto the dirt roads, even around my own property. I'm pushing the bike faster. And once you start going faster, obviously the shortcomings of the suspension start showing. And I get a lot of travel on that rear suspension now, and so I'm feeling what the other reviewers have talked about with this 300L, that the budget suspension could really benefit from an upgrade. My biggest complaint with the rear suspension is simply the shock travel. When I get to where I'm going and I go to get off the bike, I've compressed the shock down pretty good, and when I get off the bike, it's a millisecond, and then it kind of unloads, and it can catch you off guard if you're not thinking about it every time. So I don't like that shock travel just from getting off the bike. And I mentioned riding around on my own property. There's a really nice grass path stretch, and it could just about qualify as moguls. And it's fine if you're just loping along, you know, nice slow speed, but you crack the throttle and get going and it will get bouncy real quick. So a shock upgrade or a suspension upgrade is on the list. Because of the cost of a suspension upgrade, it's low on the list, but it definitely makes the list. Now, having said that, on the pavement, it's never bounced out of traction on me once. And I go around the curves the same speed that I go in the straights. So whatever the speed limit is, that's what I stick to. Straight, curve, up, down, left, right, you name it. And I haven't bounced out of traction once. So it does okay on pavement. It's just fine. Brakes. Okay, so the brakes. I've got the ABS version of the 300L. That's what the dealer had in stock. And to be honest, if the dealer would have had both versions, I probably would have picked the non-ABS version for the price difference. I've never had ABS brakes on a bike. I've never had linked brakes on a bike. That's a different subject altogether, but I'm comfortable with normal everyday motorcycle brakes. But I've been surprised with the ABS that it hasn't bothered me. It hasn't thrown me off my game. It hasn't tricked me or tripped me up any. The brakes themselves, they'll definitely stop you. They're nothing to write home about, but they're nothing to worry about either. Again, as I mentioned, I rode older Japanese inline four standard style street bikes my whole life, and they had a single disc up front, and some of them even had drum in the back, but usually a single disc in the back. And so I know what it's like to stop a motorcycle with that setup, and the brakes that come on the 300L are enough to stop the bike just fine. I'm not racing it, I'm not, you know, pushing it beyond its intended purpose, I guess. Back to the ABS. The ABS, as other reviewers have said, it's easy to turn off. You just pull over to the side and push the button, hold the button down for a few seconds, and it turns it off. You don't have to turn the bike off. You don't have to find neutral. You don't have to do any type of lever manipulation in the right order. And it'll indicate on the instrument cluster that the rear ABS is turned off, and so your rear brakes are no longer ABS-ified. Personally, I rarely turn the rear brakes off. Where I ride, there isn't a lot of steep downgrade semi-technical areas that you really want to have a locked up rear brake on, so I haven't really turned it off that much. There are a few spots where I have, and it's turned off properly, and that rear brake locks and stays locked if you want it to. But the ABS itself, the ABS function, is very predictable. It's very consistent, and it, as I said earlier, it hasn't tripped me up at all. It hasn't tricked me or thrown me off my riding game, and so leaving it on 90% of the time, the bike works great. Okay, so now we're at the powertrain. Wow, my favorite subject about the bike, the powertrain, the engine and transmission. The powertrain is really settled in and is a pleasure to operate. Now, first gear on the 300L had me stymied for quite a bit. Basically, you crack the throttle and you have to shift a second before you even blink. Luckily, I finally figured out that it acts like another vehicle I own. I've got a 1985 K20, and it's got the 4-speed manual transmission in it. And the shift knob is marked L123R. So they don't even call first gear, they call it low gear. When we were kids, everybody said granny low. It's got a granny low in it. So in that K20, you don't start from a dead stop in L, you start off in 1, which is actually the second forward gear. So on the 300L, I just use first to bump me forward, get into second, and then crack the throttle, and we're off and running. How much pull does the powertrain have for me? Well, I'm 5'11", about 180 pounds. When I take that gravel road stretch to get to the pavement, it's about 2 miles, and then lots of curves, a little bit of up and down, not a lot of elevation change, but there is, but a lot of curves. I can get up to speed, get into 5th gear, and leave it there. And I can throttle in and out of the curves without having to shift because this got plenty of power left across the RPM range that I'm in, that I don't have to keep shifting up or down. And so it's really settled in well, really like the power that it has for the size of bike that it is. Fuel economy. The fuel economy estimator on the bike's instrument cluster now says 66.1, and that's about where it hovers when I go to town and back. On the Sunday morning runs to church and back, I bumped up my indicated speed, the speed that the bike says I'm running, from 55 to about 58 or so. That seems to be where everybody else is at. So if I drop the bike back down to an indicated 55 miles per hour, that fuel economy will rise to above 67 miles per gallon, which is pretty darn good. So what about the wind pushing you around on a light bike? Yes, I have noticed the wind or big trucks can buffet the bike. I mean, it's only 300 pounds, I'm 180 on top of it, fairly narrow tires. It's going to happen, you know, that's just the way it goes. Any bike in this class, that's going to happen to. But it's nothing that has thrown me or gotten me spooked. It's anticipated. So if you know it's going to happen, it's not that big of a deal. You just carry on. The bike doesn't feel like it wants to fall down when it gets pushed. It just. Now, I haven't had it on the freeway yet, so I haven't been riding 70 miles an hour and then get pushed. That might change my mind a little bit, but we'll let you know how that goes when I do get up there and see what happens, okay? I use this bike for a 1-hour round trip to town and back once a week, and hours and hours on the back roads and fire roads during the week. All in all, I think I made a great choice for what I do with the bike. So that's pretty much it for my updated thoughts on the 2021 Honda CRF300L. I hope that you found something useful in this video somewhere. Thanks for watching. We're RTV. This is SoloScout. I'm Oscar Mike.